Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to my talk titled Do the Docs and Beyond. This talk is about exploring usually unexplored attack surfaces and vectors. Little bit about me. Who am I? I'm a hacker, bug bounty hunter, and coding documentation reader. I am also a two-time MVP and one of the top 250 hackers on Background. Okay, so let's go over the summary of this talk. This talk comprises of four issues. First is a cross-site scripting issue. That is a story of bad prevention filters and blacklists. Second is a story of Slack security misconfigurations for PII and more. Third is about pawning or hacking AEMs with the help of Querybuilder. And final one is a classic local file inclusion with no other code friend. Cool. So what is documentation, you may ask? Documentation, going by the dictionary definition of documentation is the communicable material that is either used to describe, explain, or instruct regarding some attributes of an object, system, or proceeding, such as its parts, assembly, installation, maintenance, and use. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's take a look at who uses docs anyway. Okay, so there are a few big names to it. First, there is Adobe or AEM, then there's Uber, Google Cloud, Shopify, Canva, Upwork, etc. So we should reframe that question and it should be more like who doesn't. Simple search of the term developer doc on Google brings up about 444 million results. Okay, so why documentation or what's the need? Well, docs come in all shapes and sizes, but the core concept of it remains the same. First off, it helps the readers, be it developers or the end user, to understand how a piece of code actually works. Second, it's a place of solid reference to look back up later. Third is it provides constant updates on new features and releases. And final one is on the most important one is community discussions or posts that provide new insights into a pre-existing feature or maybe some updates about the coming one. Okay, so let's go over the first bug of this talk. Here I come. So it's hacking on this product-based company or software as a service company. So had a really standard documentation as most of SaaS companies would have. So going over by this documentation, I found some. What did I find? So it's a feature to build shareable email templates. What you see is what you get. Now this is somewhat that what you see is what you get. It looks like you can format the text in different format, like italicize it. You can make it bold, or you can even add an image to it. And most interestingly, you can also view the source code or the HTML source code. Okay, now let's see what the documentation have to say about this. It says standard HTML tags are generally supported, but for security reasons, the following HTML tags and JavaScript keywords are not permitted. Well, this seems like a blacklist. Okay, so what next? It is about concerning development practices, really questionable blacklists. Now, what are blacklists, you may ask? They are actually pre-curated entity lists or list of items that are to be prevented access to. Now, what's the problem with blacklist, you may ask? There is that at least one other entity we left out. And in our case, there were quite a few. Okay, so going over to the documentation again, we have restricted HTML tags to be script tag or input button and SVG. But what about anchor tag, or what about iframe tag and other tags? Okay, and they have also restricted few JavaScript and most of all JavaScript events that begin with an on, that is on click, on load, on chain, etc. Cool, but maybe they forgot about using JavaScript, adding JavaScript URIs to the blacklist. Cool. So now that we are armed with this information, let's get hacking. Time to build a payload. Okay, so we start out with the most basic of tests, that is a blank anchor tag. This is the test. And then we proceed to adding an href attribute to the anchor tag. This href equals to boot.com, or it passes the test also. Now we try to try changing the href attribute to a JavaScript URI that is invalid. Okay, so it passes the test. And next we try to actually execute some JavaScript that is alert box. Obviously, the WAF or the filter blocks it. Cool. So after a bit of a fuzzing, I come across this that is the same, kind of the same, but just a little different. It is ahref equals to JavaScript equivalent document or domain test. Just in place of the letter C, we have and hashtag 99 and semicolon is after. So what is this, you may ask? Enter HTML entity. So what are HTML? It is a method to display reserved HTML characters like greater than or less than. But you can also convert the normal letters like A, B, C, D, E, F to HTML entity. So the corresponding HTML entity for was add hashtag 99 semicolon. The semicolon is optional. You can or cannot use it. So this WAF for the application blocked the term JavaScript. So I converted any letter of the word, say letter C, to an HTML entity that is hashtag 99 semicolon. Then the app then parsed it into the word JavaScript, hence bypassing the filters and triggering a classic alert box. Here we have stored access interaction. So once that is done, we'll move on to our second bug of this talk. It was yet another product-based company or software as a solution company, you can say that. They had a kind of webinar to interact with potential customers and introduce them to their products or their stuff. Okay, so once you sign up for that webinar, you'd get an automated Slack invite or an automated Slack invite, and that too on their main instance. So what could possibly go wrong? Yes, misconfiguration. So what are misconfigurations, you may ask? They are incorrect configuration of system that lead to security issues or security vulnerabilities. So if I were to define euphoria or a moment of extreme or sheer joy and happiness as a hacker, this would be my answer. Redacted at foo.io has invited you to join their workspace too as a guest. Sadly, I had guest access to one channel only that was reserved for the demo, but who cares? Okay, moving on. Contrary to what one might think, Slack isn't secure by default. One such misconfig allowing any or all members of the channel to restrict or allow posting in the channel. Here is a snippet of Slack official documentation explaining a bit about it, that all members by default can use this feature, but workspace admins or owners can set different permissions. What do I mean by that? It is that any random person in this invited channel could restrict posting for all of the rest people that are present in the channel, and maybe not even allow threads. Okay, so this clearly highlights the necessity of focusing on granular access controls in an organization. But wait, there's more. By simply querying Slack REST API, one could easily dump names, emails, phone numbers, and in some cases, addresses to PII to be precise. So steps to reproducing this are as follows. Firstly, you need to make a post request to Slack the default REST API, that is /API/users.list. And then you would get a JSON response that contains the results, something like this. Now it was quite a big JSON file, around 7.7 megabytes, and it contained ton of PII. So how do we make sense of this huge chunk of data? Thankfully, JQ comes to the same. It's a tool, Linux-based tool. And big thanks to my friend at Dominator98 for helping out with the regions. So we do this, that we save the even JSON data in a .json file and decat it out, and then pass it to JQ with a pipe and use the custom tag R flag to specify custom regex that beautifies the list of email names and phone numbers that we have. So with this wait command, we were able to filter more than 3.5 thousand unique entries that were of the members that were present in the Slack channel. It's a bit of a proof of concept for those who are interested. There also exist fix to that. This also from Slack official documentation said by default members' email addresses are displayed in Slack profile, but owners and admins can adjust the settings to display email addresses only to the members of the organization or to no one at all. Cool. So with that out of the way, let's go over to the third work of this talk. It is about AEMs or Adobe Experience Manager. So Adobe Experience Manager is a legacy CMS that is used by various companies across the world. So what is Querybuilder? Why does this matter? So AEM Querybuilder is a tool or framework developed by Adobe for writing simple and efficient queries in AEM. It allows building GCI path queries or O queries just simple to compose. So a query can be defined as a simple set of predicates key value form. And Querybuilder does come in different shapes and sizes like bin/querybuilder.json, /querybuilder.json.servlet, feed, and feed.servlet. Okay, what now? Let's start by debugging normal Querybuilder path. First up is the domain, that is site.com, followed by the path to Querybuilder API, that is bin/querybuilder.json, and followed by the queries or the stuff that you want to fill. But real-world instances look somewhat like this. There's the domain, followed by the path to Querybuilder API and the stuff you want to fill, and multiple slashes have whitelisted extensions in order to bypass the dispatcher configurations. After this one, we have appended a possibly whitelisted extension like .css and multiple slashes. Okay, so let's take a bit of a detour. So what is dispatcher? Well, dispatcher is AEM or Adobe Experience Manager's caching and or load balancing tool that can be used in conjunction with an enterprise class web server. This is how an AEM environment looks like. There's the author instance which replicates to public instance, which is then passed on to the dispatcher, and then finally to the general public. Well, AEM primarily relies on dispatcher.any policy to function as an allow or deny list. These certain parts are to be allowed, these extensions are to be allowed, or these things are to be allowed and these are to be denied. So an allow rule looks somewhat like this. Like the given allow rule allows access to any or all folders that are under the folders and files under the /or directory. And this is the deny rule. This would deny any GET request to the given endpoint that is /edit.html. I guess now it's clear that what role the multiple slashes and allowed extensions that is .gif, .png, .css that are added somewhere out here play in this. Good. So back to Querybuilder, time to talk about the actual stuff that would help you in vulnerability hunting or bug bounty hunting. So here's the path to Querybuilder API and followed by the stuff that you want to implement. Okay, so it's time to talk about the query parameters so that you can build queries normally and no longer rely on tool output. Yes. Well, first up is type equals to entities to file. This displays list of files that are contained in the application. Next is type equals to entities to folder, which displays folders that are in the application, and type equals to entities to page with P capital that is used for displaying pages. Next is full text string. This would scrape the entire application for any or all occurrences of the given input string. Well, next is node name equals to star.extension. You can specify this extension to be anything like .zip, .txt, and .jar, and so on. Next is path equals to /hook. This query is to perform the given operation within a specified path like /home, /var, /apps, /con, etc. Okay, next is p dot limit equals to -10. Suppose you want to specify a limit to the number of results you want to keep, like 10 or 20. So you set p dot limit equals to 10 or 20, something like that. Or maybe you want to dump all the resultant, files or folders. You would go simply p dot limit equals to -1 to extract all the. Okay, so maybe you wanna find recently modified items. You'd go order by equals to at the rate JCR is to content slash who is to last modified. This would bring about the recently modified items, or the items that have maybe a dev has touched upon recently. Okay, let's talk about property and property.value. Okay, so I'm going to give two examples of it in this talk. First is property equals to JCR is to created by, and property.value equals to admin. This would bring about all the files or folders that have been created by the admin user. You can specify this to be something like author or any of the users that you may find. Cool. So next is property equals to JCR is to title, and property.value equals to C. So this would bring about all the files or folders that have secret their title name. You can specify this to be anything else, like secret or password or something like that. Okay, so maybe you want to search on multiple paths. So group dot one underscore the parameter, that is path. So you'd go group dot one underscore path equals to slash apps, that is the first path, followed by the second path, that is group dot two underscore path equals that path. You can replace it to be htp conf, etc. anything. And group dot p dot or equals to true. So this given query would confine your operation area of operation into two folders, that is slash app and slash bot. So time to see some stuff in action. Okay, here's the full text query that I talked about here. This is for full text equals to admin and full text equals to AEM. As you can see, each one of the listed items have AEM somewhere in their body or title or something. They do have AEM in it. Next is full text equals to secret and full text equals to password. All the listed items have password somewhere in their title or name or path somewhere. Next is this query. This apparently lists all txt files in the given application. So let's break it down. First is type equals to at least to 5 for fetching files under the path, that is path slash ht, and node name equals to star.txt. Okay, and p.limit equals to -1 to fetch all the resulted queries or results. Next is for similar, just we have changed the extension to be .html here. It shows the list of HTML as compared to txt files here. Very useful in case of exfiltration. Okay. So combining queries for better results. Please take this with a grain of salt, as it won't always work depending upon the dispatcher configurations that you encounter in the file. So this is two queries, first one and second one. First one searches for all the txt files that are at the X directory, and the second one searches for all the HTML files under the X. Suppose we want to combine that into a single query. What we do? We go simply type equals to 5. We don't need to change that path, so we don't need to change that, and we group this together. Group dot one underscore the query, that is node name equals star.txt, and group dot two underscore node name equals star.html. That's it. Well, everything that I talked about is well documented in Adobe's official documentation at experiencelink.adobe.com. Okay, so one of the final ones of this talk, Sagrada School, apparently it is. This is a classic local file read or write vulnerability tail with some other good stuff. Okay, so let's go over the workflow of this talk. It was hacking on a wide scope program. Wide scope program means that any or all subdomains that you hunt on are in scope. So I went over to Shodan. What is Shodan? It's the search engine that many of us hackers use to find a specific technology or find specific hosts that are confined to a given certificate or a domain. So I use this doc or filter that is to target this searches all SSL certificates for the given tag specified to be Google or Facebook. This would search up all the certificates that belong to Facebook and Google and list all the. So assuming the target to be targets for now, inputting this, I found an IP pointed to sub.sub.sub.sub.target.com. Well, that's what I did. Upon visiting, I find a developer admin panel, which was non-functional. Many of its functions weren't working. Well, so instinctively, I went over to the application.js file that was in the source code. And upon scraping that file, I found a relative path that is /tms /api/script/file and path equals to Cuba. Well, upon seeing a path parameter, what a hacker would try doing instinctively is a path reversal and ultimately a local file inclusion. We did the same. That is simple local file inclusion payload //// the path the file that I want to expel, that is the password commonly used for proving local file inclusion, and it did the work. Get a simple get request to this endpoint would you with the file, provide you with the file. On this note, I would like to put a reservoir said live, love, and local file inclusion. Okay, sweet, but that's okay. I didn't stop on it since this TM is directly here. This seemed a little bit, out of the box. So I went over to my report brute forcing tool, that is search, and filter out 30243 and 404 responses. So I wanted only 200 OK responses, and I did get a single 200 OK response. It was a Swagger UI page or swaggerui.html. Okay, so time to take a detour again. What is Swagger UI? Simple word, a clear-cut spec, or rather a blueprint for documenting RESTful API services or REST API calls that are available on the website in GUI or graphical user interface format. It renders all the API calls generated from your OpenAPI spec with visual documentation. So, which makes it easy for A, that is backend implementation, and B is user operation. This is what you will mostly encounter in the wild, but please do take note that an exposed Swagger UI by itself isn't a security vulnerability. Okay, so every function in a Swagger UI can different API calls that are assigned to different HTTP methods that are used to perform different tasks. They get request to fetch some to redacted /redacted fetches some data, and post request to the same upload some data, and delete request to delete the uploaded data. Well, it also shows the name, description, parameters required in the API call. Additionally, it also shows the resulting responses after the API call has happened, whether it was a 200 OK or 401, 403, 404, etc. Okay, so let's talk numbers a bit here. There are about 28,206 public Swagger UI instances as per CRUD as at the moment of preparing this talk. So let's get back to our topic. This was the Swagger UI that I encoded in the wild. The first 5 operations being useless, and the 6th operation was the most juicy one. Let's take a closer look. This is what I would call perfect definition of CRUD, or create it up until it. First one is the read obvious /file. So get request, post request for creation and updation, and delete for obviously deleting files. Okay, and this is why you shouldn't leave such APIs unauthenticated. Simple post request to /cms/api/script/file was enough to create any file in any desired folder with any content type extension. I have for the demo, I included a poc.html file. And in any desired folder like slash test, I didn't hamper with slash home dev or any other important folders because that might be catastrophic to production. And as a result, the file gets created in the desired folder that slash installation. Well, next is the delete request. We specify the path to be slash test slash .html, the path to the uploaded file. Okay, and this deletes the desired file from the location file gets deleted. Awesome. Well, final one, say bonus file. It's about missing cost policy. A missing cost policy check can be easily looked by supplying a arbitrary origin. I specified my pubco laboratory one in place of the origin header, and it reflected back in the ACAO or access control allow origin with credentials. So this is a very simple exploit for the code misconfiguration called function CRUD that sent an XML HTTP request of the chart to the vulnerable endpoint and with credentials. Successful exploitation of this vulnerability would lead to disclosure of the authenticated information pertaining to the restricted user. Cool. So a few takeaways from this talk. First is blacklists aren't always foolproof. Second is focus on granular access control configurations or issues, since the human element is very error prone. Third is while testing any CMS, need all public documentation to better understand how it actually works. And the fourth one and the final one, never leave sensitive APIs unauthenticated, be it staging, dev, or production. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and big thanks to Besides Barcelona team for allowing me this opportunity to present my talk. And you can talk to me at this streak at on Twitter and for questions.
So let's give a couple of minutes just if people wants to write some questions in the meanwhile. Sure. Again, as I said, you can write the questions here in Zoom, or you can write them in Slack and we'll take care of them. We wait a couple of minutes, just one question. I'm very curious. I never heard about the what's called the Adobe Business Experience.
Adobe Experience Manager.
Business Manager, yeah. Yeah, exactly. How common is it? How many instances
it's very common. Tesla uses it, Volkswagen uses it, many other companies. Twitter uses it.
Oh, okay. Again, for me, it was like it's quite interesting, right? And then I was Googling at the beginning.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, okay, it's quite interesting. Let me Google and see how common is it, because again, usually...
You can find tons of posts or domains in the wild.
Oh, okay.
A lot of big companies.
Say again?
A lot of big companies do. Ton of big.
Okay. I was thinking they were more like SharePoint and all this type of stuff. So not really sure about that. So no, I mean, we don't have any question. So far we have, just someone who wants to thank you. Nihal was just thanking you, and it was cool, and it's like learned something about Querybuilder. Again, I think everyone just knew something about Querybuilder. It was
yes, it's quite famous, but like people actually tend to stick to the tool output, and usually they don't put much effort in building the queries manually or trying out stuff that is present in the documentation. So that's what this talk was about.
Makes sense. Yeah, okay. We don't have any questions so far. So I would hold on a second. Okay, so hold on. There is a question. Okay, there we go. Stephen Nihal, is there a coarse misconfiguration often exists in Swagger UI? I mean, it's common.
It depends, but you can find it is kind of common, but it depends on the the people that are building it in the backend. They do specify the checks that it would exist, but if they leave it as is, then it would exist.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Nihal, thanks you again. So anyway,
Thanks. Well, thank you to you. This was my and all of besides partner. This was my first of this security business. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thanks to you. And again, if you have any more question or you want to reach out to Debangshu, he's in Slack, so we can reach out to him.